I never imagined I'd go from average to unstoppable. His reaction took my breath away. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. It started out like any other Thursday. The sun was out, birds chirping, and my mom was making her famous pancakes. The smell wafted through the house, a sweet reminder of childhood bliss. But as the morning wore on, an unsettling feeling crept in. My heart raced a little faster. Something felt off. I was texting Amanda, my best friend, about the show we were binge-watching. Suddenly, her replies stopped. I could imagine her face, frowned in concentration, sleeves rolled up, ready to defend our show against critics. I felt that lump in my throat. My palms trembled as I felt the sting of worry. I texted again. Silence. At school, things took a turn. I walked in, and the energy shifted. Whispers fluttered through the hall, like startled birds. I could hear snippets. Did you hear? And what a shame. My heart dropped. I scanned the crowd for Amanda, eyes wide, searching for comfort. I found her, but she was standing with a group I barely recognized. They were laughing, her laughter a sharp contrast to my tightening chest. They turned to me, and suddenly, everything felt like slow motion. Amanda's expression: shock, betrayal. It cut through me like ice. I approached, heart hammering. What was going on? Then I saw it. On her phone, a notification. My world erupted. There it was, my secret laid bare, a video of me, crying when I thought I was alone, posted online for everyone to see. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, tears pooling in my eyes. The room spun. She's a mess. Someone yelled. Laughter roared around me, like a wave crashing over. My knees felt weak. I stumbled back, my mind raced. Why would she do this? Wasn't I her friend? I was in a fog, my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I could feel the shadows of shame closing in. My palms felt clammy, and I could barely breathe. I turned and ran. I didn't care where I was going. I just needed to get away. The hallways twisted, confusing, as if the walls were closing in. Each step echoed with whispers, my name lingering in the air, heavy and haunting. I burst into the bathroom, locked the door. I leaned against it, trembling. The harsh lights made everything feel sharper, harsher. I caught my reflection, eyes red and puffy. A wave of despair washed over me, and I felt so small, so powerless. But then, in that moment of crushing loneliness, a flicker of anger ignited. If they all thought I was a joke, I could show them. I could be more. I could be unstoppable. But how? A soft knock pulled me back. Hey, are you all right? It was Amanda, voice trembling. My heart stopped. How could she come here? The betrayal felt like a knife. Just go, I shouted, the pain pouring out. But what if what she had done wasn't the end? Then, I found myself staring at that reflection again. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I stayed pressed against the bathroom door, breathing heavily, my eyes locked onto my reflection, although it felt like I was staring at a stranger. I could feel Amanda outside, but the weight of her betrayal sat like a stone in my chest. Just go, I had shouted, but part of me wanted no, needed her to fight for me, to explain why she had shared the video that painted me as a spectacle rather than a friend. Please. I'm just worried, she said softly, her voice quivering. You don't need to be alone right now. Alone? I thought bitterly. Hadn't that been her choice? The laughter still echoed in my ears, pulling me back to that moment when vulnerability turned into ridicule. Memories of our late-night talks, shared secrets, and the sisterhood we had built felt hollow now. In that moment, a fierce resolve ignited within me. I would not let this define me. I opened the door, not sure if I was ready to confront Amanda or just desperate for a glimmer of camaraderie. She stood there, eyes wide with a mix of concern and regret. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears brimming. I almost felt a flicker of empathy, but it was too raw, too painful. "What were you thinking?" I choked out, my voice thick with emotion. "Why would you do this to me?" "I thought it was funny," she admitted, her shoulders slumping in embarrassment. "But I didn't realize I didn't think it would hurt you like this." "Your humor isn't worth my pain," I interrupted, my voice rising. "You don't get to just brush this off like it's a joke." Silence settled, thick and suffocating, as her face fell. I turned away, not wanting to witness my best friend crumbling. I had never meant to hurt her, yet there was a sharp relief in breaking free of that facade of easy friendship. I felt free and trapped all at once. "I just wanted to be liked," Amanda whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought maybe if I shared something real, I'd fit in. But I never wanted this for you." The weight of her admissions hung between us, and in the room's dark fluorescent light, I saw the truth of her pain mirrored in my own. We stood in a silent battlefield, both of us bruised, both of us alone despite the other's presence. "I don't even know how to fix this," I murmured, softening just a fraction. "I know it's hard to believe, but I want to make it better. I'll talk to everyone, tell them it was wrong." "I'll know," I interrupted again, my voice steadier now. "You can't fix this. They'll always remember. Every time they look at me, they'll remember that video. We'll never go back to what we were." Her lips quivered, but I could see the shift in her expression. She would accept that I needed to distance myself. "I'll be here," she said quietly, and then she stepped away, leaving me standing there, a fortress of unresolved emotions. After she left, I leaned back against the cool tiles, eyes shut tight, drowning in the cacophony of thoughts. The laughter shifted frequencies in my mind, merging with a resolve. It was time to embrace the changes, to unapologetically own who I was, even if vulnerability felt like a raw wound. Days passed in a haze of colored whispers and stolen glances. Even at lunch, I felt the sharpness of their judgment slice across the air, but I also found glimmers of unexpected kindness. A sophomore girl, Clara, who sat alone Sunday after the incident, offered me a smile that reminded me of the simple joys. "It'll blow over," she assured, her voice gentle and sincere, and her small gesture felt like a soft blanket on a frigid night. But even the kindness came with its own shadow. Whispers would always follow me, the video forever lurking, a reminder that my vulnerability had been exposed for all to see. I made a decision to reshape my narrative, to transform the tragedy into a triumph. I would become unstoppable, and I would not hide. What I didn't know was how much I would need to fight against more than just taunts. It wasn't until I stumbled upon Amanda sitting with a group that night, her laughter ringing clear, that the night turned grimly darker. Among them was a boy who had always been kind to me, Trevor, now leaning in close, a smile on his face. My heart raced at the sight, but then it twisted painfully, witnessing them together. That was my moment. I wanted to speak to him, to bond over shared interests, but my chance faded as I realized Amanda was leaning into him, sharing a laugh. The hollow pit in my stomach flared anew as I turned to leave, but the sight of my phone buzzed violently in my pocket caught my attention. Curiosity propelled me, and without thinking, I pulled it out to read the notification. It was a DM. "You'll want to see what Amanda just did," it read, with a video thumbnail beneath it. My pulse quickened as I clicked it, watching in disbelief as a new video loaded, a video showing Amanda, her face flushed and glowing, excitedly sharing her version of events, portraying me as the villain in our story. My hand shook as I processed the betrayal, the shock realization slamming into me with catastrophic force. I could feel the breath hitch in my throat. She had not only recorded my lowest moment but crafted a narrative twisting everything I had been. There was no turning back. I gripped the phone tighter, an electric thrill of anger and fear coursing through me. What was I going to do now? Would I be able to rise even when the ground beneath me felt like it was dissolving? I blinked at the screen, the flickering light illuminating my face as I sat frozen on the edge of my bed. Amanda's smile gleamed back at me, completely unaware of the devastation she had unleashed. My heart thundered, and a cold rush of disbelief washed over me. She had turned the tide against me, casting me into the murky waters of cruelty with the ease of a flicking pen. The moment felt suspended in time, the world around me fading into a muted blur as I struggled to comprehend how a friendship I cherished could become an item in her arsenal. I had spent the last few days reeling from the impact of her initial betrayal, but this felt like a dagger plunged deeper than I had anticipated. The buoyancy I marveled at just days ago seemed to evaporate, leaving me feeling heavier, more anchored to the depths of despair than I'd ever known. I switched my phone screen off, my gaze dropping lifelessly to the worn carpet of my room, not wanting to face the truth that loomed like a storm cloud overhead. I had been fighting against the echoes of laughter, the whispers of strangers. Now I was left with the ice-cold fact that my once closest companion had chosen to rewrite my story for herself, morphing me into a shadow of the person I recognized. Would anyone see through her lies? I felt my stomach churn with dread. Suddenly, the calm of night was shattered by a sudden rapping on my door. A moment later, it swung open, revealing my brother Jake's anxious face. He was wrapped in a hoodie, his gaze piercing through the dark as if sensing my turmoil. "You okay?" he asked, concern etched into every crevice of his brow. He had always been my anchor, though I had tried my best to shield him from the tumultuous waves crashing over me. "I am fine," I replied, the words tasting bitter like ash in my mouth. "Come on." He leaned against the door frame, a wary smile faltering on his lips. "You've been staring into space for the last hour." "Something's up." Of course, I was doing that, but I wasn't interested in dragging him down with me. "Just tired, Jake." I wasn't really in the mood to hang out. He stepped into my room, crossing his arms defensively. "It's more than that. I can tell when you're faking it." "Look, if something's bothering you," I said, "I'm fine." My voice burst forth, stronger than I intended. I immediately regretted it, but it was too late. His careful expression turned to one of hurt, and while I wished to draw him closer, to confide in him, the walls I had built to protect my heart were crumbling under the weight. Before I could apologize, he pressed ahead. "I just want you to know that I'm here for you, no matter what it is. You don't have to go through this alone." The sincerity in his words chipped at the armor around my heart, and I could feel something shift, a yearning to let him in, to spill the truth. But the jar of emotions was tightly sealed, the betrayal sharp enough to slice open the door I had barred. "Well, talk," I finally said, my voice softer, "just not yet." The promise hung between us, a fragile thread of hope, and I saw Jake nod slowly, understanding painted all over his face. "All right," he said, his voice just above a whisper. "But if you need me, you know where to find me." He lingered for a moment before slipping back out of my room, and I could hear the soft thud of his footsteps retreating down the hallway. I buried my face in my hands, each breath heavy and laced with pain. Somehow, the rest of that night blurred into an unsettled slumber, filled with fragmented dreams clouded by images of laughter and uncertainty. The next morning, the sunlight streamed through my curtains, but it felt dimmer today. Every glance in the mirror reminded me of the storm of emotions swirling inside. I wore my mask on the way to school, determined to navigate the hallways with an air of resilience, even as my heart trembled beneath the surface. Yet, as I entered the school, the air carried whispers that snaked through the crowd. Groups huddled together, eyes darting towards me. I threw myself into my classes, focusing on lectures, but the heat of scrutiny was relentless. It was during lunch when I found Clara again. She was sitting at her usual table, her smile warm and inviting even as I approached, uncertain. I needed a reprieve from the chaos swirling around me. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, barely able to mask the fear that accompanied my words. "Of course," she said, and as I settled next to her, I felt a flicker of escape. It wasn't long before our conversation turned light and grounded, a reminder of days when friendship was something innocent and pure. But even in the smallest moments of laughter, a cloud of tension hovered over me. "Did you see the video?" Clara asked suddenly, her eyebrows knitting together in concern. "No." I shook my head, cringing at the mere mention. "I don't want to. It's spreading everywhere," she said gently. I wanted to check on you, you know. Thanks." I smiled thinly, but internally I was crumbling. The betrayal sting was deafening. The way Amanda had spun my sense of worth into alien threads. How was I supposed to rise when the very foundation of my being was being questioned? Suddenly, the cafeteria doors swung open violently, and the room grew still as if time hung suspended. My heart plummeted as Amanda stepped inside, a spotlight illuminating her thriving confidence as she held her phone aloft, her laughter ringing out like a victorious anthem. She was with Trevor, and the way he leaned in, chuckling conspiracies at her side, was enough to send the darkest tendrils wrapping around my heart. In that moment, everything shifted. I saw not just my situation, but the wider world around me shift to focus on her triumphant energy. There was something deeply unnerving about watching my former friend harnessing every ounce of attention, creating a subsidiary narrative, a siren call urging everyone to join her side, to witness my fall. Just as despair threatened to consume me, my phone buzzed again. With shaky hands, I opened the message, and the anchor beneath lost its grip. "You need to see this," it read, accompanied by a new video thumbnail featuring Amanda again, but this time with a caption that made my blood run cold. "The enemy revealed." I could only stare, feeling the walls close around me once more. I was on the precipice of battling for my voice amidst the chaos, but could I muster the courage? I swallowed hard, my heart racing, knowing I was now teetering at the edge of a fight I had not anticipated, a war not just for my identity, but for the truth itself. The ringing of the lunch bell echoed through the cafeteria, but it felt more like a death knell than a call to freedom. As Amanda continued to bask in the rapt attention of her peers, waves of unease surged through the crowd. Her laughter caught like electricity in the air, infecting those around her with a wild kind of frenzy. I shifted uncomfortably in my seat, Clara's voice a faint whisper against the growing storm of my thoughts. "Can you believe her?" Clara muttered, her brow crease mirroring my own tension. "It's, like, so unnecessary." "Yeah," I replied absently, my gaze drifting back to the table where Amanda sat. I could feel the warmth of the sunlight from the windows wash over me, but it offered little relief from the chill creeping into my bones. But then, I caught sight of something unexpected, a figure rising from the back of the cafeteria. Simone, the school's most introverted student, was standing, hands clenched into fists, her usually quiet demeanor morphing into a brave silhouette against the tide of voices. "Enough!" she shouted, her voice sending shockwaves through the chatter. A hush fell over the sea of students, and Amanda turned, her expression one of bemused mockery. "What did you say?" she replied, feigning innocence, but I could see the flicker of irritation sparking behind her facade. "I said enough. Why don't you stop playing with people's feelings for entertainment?" Simone's words were a raw injection of truth, piercing through the perfumed air of deceit. A ripple of disbelief coursed through the cafeteria. My heart soared at the sight of her standing up, but ripples of fear tinged my excitement. Would Amanda retaliate? Would this only incite more backlash against Simone? What a loser, Amanda sneered, turning her back on Simone, dismissing her like a waste of breath. But the moment of tension didn't deflate. Instead, it ignited a spark of defiance. More students began to whisper in agreement, a little muttering of discontent bubbling toward the surface. I could hardly breathe, torn by the newfound unity that was emerging, but still terrified of possible repercussions. Then, as if it were a scene orchestrated by fate, Clara leaned closer to me. "You should say something," she urged. "You can't just let them do this to you." "Say what?" I asked, my voice barely a murmur as I fought the impulse to cave under her stares. "Anything. The truth. Your truth." I looked around, suddenly holding all the weight of an unspoken plea. The energy in the room shifted again. People were looking at me now. I could feel the specter of Amanda's betrayal looming larger than life, but as I locked eyes with Simone, a flicker of something ignited within me. Courage. It wasn't enough to heal the wounds, but it was a first small step toward reclaiming my narrative. "I know," I stammered, recoiling at the thought of revealing the fragile bones of my emotions. But then I felt the steadying presence of Clara's hand on mine, and for a moment I thought of Jake's concern, the warmth of his understanding. Could I honor that? The swell of voices around me urged me to rise. I felt my heart race, the weight of my truth flooding the space as I stood abruptly, each eye now pinned on me. "Amanda," I addressed her, forcing the name off my tongue into a channel of defiance I didn't know I possessed. "What you did was wrong. You made a choice to laugh at someone else's pain while playing the victim. That's not friendship. It's cruelty." A wave of murmurs swept through the cafeteria, and I felt the gaze shift, their scrutiny tightening against Amanda like a noose. Her expression hardened into a mask I hadn't seen before, something cold and calculating. "You think you're brave now, huh?" she sneered, but I noted the tremor in her voice. "Maybe brave isn't the right word," I countered, the adrenaline coursing through me. "Maybe it's just tired of being a pawn in your game." And just as that altered my footing, revealing cracks in her armor, the piercing sound of a phone ringing punctuated the air, shattering the tension like fragile glass. It was mine. The vibration thrummed against the table beneath me, loud and disorienting. "Not now," I mouthed at the screen, but I couldn't ignore the urgency. I glanced down and saw a text flash across the screen with a name I hadn't expected, Trevor. My heart sank. Could he be any closer to Amanda? Would his support feel like betrayal? A swarm of anxious thoughts buzzed around my head like angry wasps, but the text was already there, bursting onto the screen. "You need to see the rest of the video. It's bigger than you think." I felt a cacophony of emotions collide within me. Dread, curiosity, fear. What was bigger than this betrayal? The weight of everyone's attention backed me against the wall. I was poised between standing my ground and the fear of having everything unravel before me. "Sorry," I breathed, trying to dispel distractions of heartache and horror around me. I did what I feared most. I stepped toward the exit of the cafeteria, the hand of fate pushing me into a realm unknown, fearing the storm of truth that lay just beyond the door. As I pushed through the heavy cafeteria doors, the cacophony of voices dulled to a tease behind me. I was drowning in a sea of conflicting emotions, uncertainty clawing at my throat as I aimed for the sanctuary of the dimly lit hallway. The bright fluorescent lights overhead felt almost mocking, illuminating the doubts that rippled through me. Each step away from Amanda and her smirk brought a tiny flicker of relief, but it was overshadowed by the troubling weight of Trevor's message. I slid down against the cold, textured wall, phone still grasped tightly in my hand, face illuminated by the flickering screen. The rest of the world faded into a soft blur as I read and reread his words, my pulse quickening with each pass. "You need to see the rest of the video. It's bigger than you think." What video? Why did this feel like another trap hidden beneath a layer of sweetness? My mind flitted back to the chaos of the cafeteria, where so many pairs of eyes had turned toward Amanda at that moment of collective awakening. But was it enough? "You okay?" A soft voice cut through my whirlwind thoughts, pulling me from my daze. It was Jake, his expression laced with concern that mirrored my own growing dread. I don't know," I managed, forcing a shaky breath. The warmth of his presence calmed the storm inside, even if just for a heartbeat. I desperately wanted to confide in him, but uncertainty gnawed at me. Did I dare share the doubt that came paired with Trevor's message? "You were incredible in there," he said, a gentle smile breaking through his worry. "Standing up to Amanda like that, people need to see that." But the praise felt like a veil, temporarily concealing the trepidation twisting my insides. "What if it just made things worse?" I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. I didn't want to tarnish his image of bravery with the weight of my fear. "Hey!" He knelt down beside me, his eyes earnest. "It's only worse if you allow it to be. You've taken the first step. That's what matters. And you're not alone." He was right. Simone had stood up. Clara backed me up. A volley of alone was pierced by moments of courage kindled in the most unexpected corners. But as my fingers glided down the screen, my heart constricted at the thought of what Trevor could reveal. "Thank you," I said as our eyes met, folding into the steadfast warmth of Jake's gaze. "But I got a text from Trevor, and it feels important, but I don't know if I want to know what it is." For a moment, I saw the flicker of understanding cross his features, the kind that told me he was more aware than I had given him credit for. But even in that moment, a wave of uncertainty overshadowed his reassurance. "Maybe Trevor found something out that could help you, something you need to see," he suggested gently, though I could tell he felt an edge of hesitation himself. I looked down at my phone, fingers trembling against the screen. What if it's something else? Something that proves I was foolish to believe in Amanda? I don't know if I can handle more betrayal. "Do you want me with you?" Jake asked, his voice low with sincerity. I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me for his offer, but that gratitude was quickly layered with uncertainty. Could I share this part of my life with him? Could I allow him to see the darker shades beneath my courage? "Let's just take a look together," I finally replied, the moment alive with potential yet shadowed by the inklings of fear. He glanced at his own phone, the moment stretched taut. "Okay, just let me call Trevor. Maybe he can meet us somewhere," Jake suggested. I nodded, the anticipation fluttering in my chest as Jake began talking to Trevor. A shadow of hurt flickered at the thought of meeting him, but there was a deeper, burgeoning hope dancing through me as well. As Jake ended the call, his brow furrowed slightly. "He wants to meet us by the old gym in 10 minutes. The words hung in the air, thick and heavy with uncertainty. Would I feel the same surge of defiance if what Trevor had to say only dragged me further into Amanda's web? And then, just as I felt the tide of emotions beginning to stabilize, a sudden reminder that life held little mercy, a figure appeared down the hall. It was Amanda, flanked by her usual entourage. My heart dropped as her eyes locked onto mine, a smirk crawling across her lips. There was a confidence about her, too breezy and self-assured to dismiss. Did someone call for a show? Her words dripped with mockery, sending icy tendrils clawing down the back of my throat. The challenge in her stance ignited that familiar fear again, a dark wave lurking beneath the shallow waters of my bravado. Jake instinctively shifted between me and Amanda, a shield against her, but I felt his tension radiate to me, the imminent storm set to break with just the wrong word. "Don't let her get to you," he murmured softly, but my breath turned shallow, the reality crashing around me as I grappled with the decision to walk toward Trevor or face Amanda's taunts. In that heartbeat time slowed, and I felt fate slicing through the remaining threads of my resolve. The choice loomed large, monstrous in its implications. I could either cling to the hope Trevor offered or risk the treacherous waters ahead with Amanda. A realization hit me hard, a dark truth that stung with potential. The deeper I dug into this betrayal, the more I felt shackled by both Amanda's cruelty and Trevor's hidden complexities. And then, the weight of Amanda's voice echoed in my ears. Are you really prepared to risk it all for some neat little fantasy you dream about? For a moment, I teetered on the edge of a precipice, hope and fear colliding, pressuring me toward an unexpected brink of my own making. Just as I began to understand what was really at stake, a deafening explosion roared through the hall, shaking the very foundation beneath us. The emergency alarms blared, and the lights flickered ominously, cascading chaotic shadows around us. My heart raced as identical panic filled the air, but amidst that chaos, I also felt the threads of liberated truth intertwining with every heartbeat, daring me to embrace the reckoning approaching like a storm. The siren screamed, and in that fearful moment, an unexpected doubt intermingled with something electric, the sense that adventure awaited just beyond the veil of uncertainty, swirling amid the flames of change. The blaring alarms resonated through the air, heralding chaos as students began to surge toward the exits. My body, however, was rooted in place, caught in a crosswind of emotions and choices. The realization that the world outside had fractured so quickly pressed on my chest. Jake's hand tightened on my arm, a silent anchor amid the swirling storm of frightened faces. "Come on!" he urged, breaking me from the paralysis that gripped me. There was a fire in his eyes, determination cutting through the haze of panic. I looked past Amanda, who seemed momentarily taken aback, caught off guard by the sudden upheaval around her. But the flicker of her confusion only served to intensify the resolve within me. I refused to be a pawn in her game. As I began to move, Jake guided me with ease, his presence a steady force beside me. Together we navigated through the throngs of students, all fleeing like frightened animals. But even as my feet carried me towards the exit, my mind was still caught in the swirling vortex of uncertainty surrounding Trevor's ominous message. "Jake, what if this is more than just a fire drill?" I managed between breaths, my thoughts racing. What if Trevor was right? What if there's something more dangerous at play? He glanced sideways at me, understanding etched in his brow. "Well, figure it out," he promised. His unwavering conviction settled me momentarily, but worry was a viscous substance that clung to the fibers of my being. Once outside, the cold air hit me with a jolt, a sharp contrast from the stifling heat of the cafeteria. My skin prickled as sirens howled in the distance, signaling both urgency and unrest. Everyone around us scrambled like ants disturbed from their nest, coalescing in huddled groups, faces stricken with concern, and then I saw him. Trevor was leaning against the cool brick wall of the school, an unsettling demeanor shrouding him. His eyes fixed on the chaos, yet when they locked onto mine, an inscrutable expression crossed his face, a mix of relief and something else I couldn't quite decipher. Watching him was akin to looking at shifting shadows. There was urgency in his posture, but also a hint of anticipation, as though he had been waiting for this moment. "Why are you here?" I called out, instinctively feeling the weight of Amanda's scorn through the noise of sirens. The chaos around us seemed to drown out my apprehension, and I yearned for answers amidst the overwhelming darkness. "We have to talk now," Trevor responded, his tone firm yet low, urgency bleeding through as he glanced nervously around us, almost as if someone were listening. "It's not safe here. Come with me." My instincts warred within minute. I trust him. But curiosity gnawed at me more fiercely. Did I really want to uncover whatever truth he held, especially in light of everything that had just unfolded? I wanted to scream that I wasn't a pawn, that I would no longer play the game dictated by others. Before I could make any decisions, Amanda's sneering voice cut through the chaos, pulling all eyes back to her. "Oh, look! The snitch brought his little entourage to the party," she taunted, leaning casually against the wall. There it was, a shroud of fear draped over everyone, and Amanda was only too ready to pull the strings of that fear. "Leave," Jake interjected, stepping protectively in front of me. But his confidence faltered under Amanda's measured gaze. "What's next, Jake? You think you can protect her from the truth?" Her laughter rang hollow in the tumult, mocking whatever sense of safety we clung to. "She thinks she's a hero, but look around, she's just leading the rebellion straight to disaster." The truth of her words sliced through me with a painful clarity. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing against my chest. As I stood there watching clearer than ever, I realized that every confrontation, every shadowy doubt Trevor had stirred within me was intertwined with the very core of who I was. My heart raced, driven by the adrenaline pumping through me and the ticking clock of my choices. "Let's go!" I blurted, my voice rising above the chaos, surprising even myself. I turned toward Trevor, the urgency in me shifting into action. "I have to know what you wanted to show me." Before I could debate further, I grabbed Jake's hand and started to follow Trevor away from the crowd. We wove through the panicking students, the air thick with tension. As I glanced back for a moment, Amanda's smirk was gone, replaced with a shadow of uncertainty, an unexpected moment of vulnerability that gave me a tinge of satisfaction. Trevor led us toward a side exit, grim determination etched deep in his features. Once outside the building, he turned to face us, the sun blazing overhead, illuminating him with an almost ethereal glow. "Listen," he began, his voice low and serious. "I wouldn't have contacted you if it wasn't important. I think Amanda might know more than we realize." There was desperation in his eyes, the shared urgency creating an unspoken bond in that frantic moment. My heart pounded in my chest, both from the adrenaline of the alarms and the revelation I sensed was looming just beyond reach. "What do you mean?" I pressed, my mind racing, trying to unpack the layers of his words. Before Trevor could answer, the earth seemed to tremble beneath our feet, a tremor so strong it sent waves of panic jolting through the air. Students screamed, and the ground shook. A gnawing dread swept over me as reality began to sink in. Trevor's eyes caught mine, his expression shifting from urgency to fear. "I need you to trust me," he urged. "There's something I haven't told you, something that changes everything." In that breathless moment, I felt the weight of all the choices before me coalescing into a singular danger. With echoes of chaos behind us and the unknown looming ahead, I could either take the plunge or pull back into the shadows, revealing the deepest complexities of betrayal and trust. And as dread slipped into anticipation, I realized that the heart of the truth was yet to be unlocked, an adventure that would lead us further than any of us had ever imagined, and perhaps on a path that would fracture everything we thought we knew. With my heart racing, I took a step forward. "What do I need to know?" I asked, feeling the energy shift around us, charged with the unmistakable weight of destiny tightening its grip. The final thread was ready to unravel, but I wasn't sure if I was strong enough to bear what lay beneath it. The ground continued to tremble beneath our feet, each violent shudder twisting my stomach into knots. Trevor's gaze, wild with urgency, bore into me as if he could will the truth from the depths of my confusion. "We can't stay here," he insisted, tightening his grip on my arm, ready to drag me away from the impending chaos. But I hesitated, the gravity of the moment hanging heavy in the air. "Where do we go?" I asked, disbelief coloring my voice. The idea that running could somehow lead us to safety felt naive, and yet my instincts screamed that there were secrets lurking behind Trevor's intense eyes. He shook his head. "Somewhere we can talk and listen." I nodded, allowing him to direct us, but only tentatively. The stranglehold of fear gripped my thoughts, intertwining with curiosity about what he had to say. Jake followed closely behind, his presence a soothing balm against the inevitable storm. "What could Amanda possibly know?" he asked, pulse quickening as we slipped into a nearby alley, hidden from the frantic scene unfolding outside. "I'm not sure," Trevor replied, urgency snapping through his voice. "But I've seen her in places that she shouldn't be. I think she's involved in something dangerous. Something bigger, darker." "Amanda?" Seriously? Doubt woven into my tone, I struggled with the incongruity of Trevor's words. The girl I'd once despised seemed incapable of any nuances beyond her sharp tongue and clear disdain. She'd always been as predictable as a summer storm. Just then, a flicker of movement caught my eye at the alley's mouth. My heart dropped as I spotted Amanda surreptitiously glancing in our direction. She hadn't followed us, but the simmering malice in her eyes told me this wasn't over. "She's watching us," I whispered, dread pooling in my stomach. "Stay closey, it could be a diversion," Trevor urged, blocking my view of the alley's exit, his instincts sharper than my own in this leadership role. "We need to find a way to get to the safe house. If we're right, they're going to come for us." A chill swept through me. "Who's they?" "People who can do much worse than embarrass you during lunch," Trevor replied soberly. "People who thrive on fear, who will twist our lives for a game." "Wait!" I interjected, a spark of rebellion igniting within. "You're talking like we're in a movie. This isn't real, Trevor. Are you sure you're not just reading too deeply into things?" The defensiveness in my voice surprised even me, but I was desperate to cling to some semblance of normalcy amid the chaos. "Just look at what's happening," he snapped back. "None of this is a coincidence. The drills, the alarms, everything has been designed to sow distrust, chaos. This is the moment they've been waiting for." The fire in his voice was unsettlingly contagious, igniting a flame of truth that was impossible to ignore. My world felt like it was tilting on its axis. Everything I thought I knew was unraveling like fragile threads. I instinctively grabbed Jake's hand, grounding myself against the rising tide of confusion and fear. As if in response to Trevor's last words, the ground shook again, this time more fiercely. A spray of dust crumbled from the buildings overhead, and I felt the tension in the air tighten surrounding us, thick with an overwhelming darkness. "Get inside," a voice shouted from the street, dragging us even deeper into our tense bubble. Panic searing across my nerves forced my heart into overdrive, as unseen eyes bore down on us. "Where?" I yelled, eyes darting, alive with terror. Trevor gestured toward an unmarked van parked at the opposite end of the alley, half hidden by a dumpster. "There. We need to move now." We rushed for the van, every beat of my heart pounding against the frailty of our choices. But as we neared the vehicle, dread surged, overpowering the adrenaline pushing me onward. My mind was consumed with the burgeoning realization: if we climbed inside that van, I would be stepping into the unknown danger lurking just beneath the surface of my instincts. But before we could reach it, the chaos outside erupted anew. Shouts mixed with the wails of sirens, creating a cacophony of horror, drowning any sense of reason. Suddenly, Trevor stopped short, eyes wide as he turned to face me. "As soon as we're inside, I need you to trust me completely." "Why?" I asked, fear curling around my words. "Why should I trust you after everything?" "Because I know how this ends if you don't," he whispered urgently, the sincerity in his voice piercing through the panic. His words settled uneasily in the air, potent with implication. Confusion washed over me, almost forcing me to retreat. Yet something deeper beckoned, a desire to break free from the path scripted for me, to grasp at whatever shards of freedom remained. I took a shallow breath, feeling the cold air pierce my lungs. Just as Trevor turned to push open the door, a sharp cry rang out from the street, freezing us in our tracks. "Get down!" Jake shouted, ducking into my side, his body instinctively shielding me. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the alley, a hollow reminder that danger could emerge just a heartbeat away. The reality of our situation hit me like a punch to the gut. We were standing on the brink of something catastrophic, and with one misstep, everything I had hoped for could slip away in the blink of an eye. Panic surged, and the only words loud enough to escape my lips were, "What now?" And there, with the shadows closing in, I knew we had crossed a threshold we couldn't return from. The taste of fear mingling with the bitter realization that in this game of survival, Trust was a fragile commodity I might never be able to reclaim. The alley morphed into a claustrophobic shell, every heartbeat punctuated by the imminent threat of chaos crashing in around us. As I stood there, frozen between Trevor's demand and the encroaching violence outside, I felt the air thicken with dread, each moment stretching into eternity as shouts rang out. Jake clutched my wrist, his pulse racing against my skin, and I could feel the thunderous beat of exhilaration and terror mixing into a wild storm within me. It became impossible to tell where our fears ended and our hopes began. I searched Trevor's eyes, fiery with determination yet softened with something that hinted at his own fear. The weight of his unyielding gaze strengthened my resolve, and yet, still, the gnawing doubt remained. Amid the dissonance, I heard another shattered cry. "Get to safety. Move now." The voice felt like a bell tolling for us, summoning us to make a choice when everything I knew compelled me to retreat. This run towards the van was impossible. Every instinct screamed for survival, to let the adrenaline drive me to flee this impending danger. And still, the thought of leaving Trevor off, abandoning someone I barely understood, sent shockwaves through me. Was I willing to trust my survival to him? But before I could process my spiraling thoughts, a group of shadowy figures emerged from the street. They were masked, moving with a predatory purpose, each step echoing ominously across the pavement, and I felt Jake's grip tighten to the point of pain. Panicking, I glanced at Trevor, who had an intensity in his expression like a candle flame flickering in a storm. "Now, get in," he commanded, yanking the van door open and shoving Jake inside. I hesitated only for a heartbeat. A single moment stretched into an insurmountable distance as my heart pounded in sync with the chaos surrounding us. Finally, the impulse to follow surged high within me. I slipped into the van, and Trevor followed, his urgent movements reading the gravity of our escape. The interior was dark and musty, the air thick with fear and uncertainty. My pulse raced as the door slammed shut, sealing us into a cocoon of gloom and uncertainty. Trevor's face strained with urgency, eyes darting to the van's rearview mirror as he fired the engine to life. I glanced at Jake, whose face mirrored my own, a mixture of confusion and resolve mingling in his ocean blue eyes. "Where are we going?" I asked, breaking the silence, stifling the fear threatening to rise. I desperately wanted answers, but felt the question hang uselessly in the air. "Anywhere but here," he replied tersely, his focus unwavering on the street before us. "They won't stop until they know we aren't a threat." Just then, a series of gunshots erupted outside. I instinctively ducked, pressing my back against the cold vinyl seat, my hands shaking violently. I could feel my heart racing to match the machine's growl, pounding against my ribs, like a frantic prisoner trying to escape. "Do you think it was Amanda?" Jake whispered, fear choking his voice as he glanced out the window, the flickering scene of chaos unfolding outside igniting his worries. "I don't know," Trevor replied, his jaw clenching. "But if she's involved, it means we're deeper in this than any of us anticipated." The truth in his words gnawed at me, a thought that wrapped around my consciousness like a heavy shroud. Questions swirled around my mind, demanding to be asked, but before I could voice them, Trevor's voice snapped me back to the moment. "We need to strategize. Stay low, stay quiet." The weight of his command settled on my shoulders as the van lurched forward, tires screeching against the pavement, leading us away from the chaos ripping through our lives like wildfire. I felt helpless, lodged in the depths of my fear as we pulled away, every second tainted with the knowledge that there were no guarantees of what lay ahead. Yet even in the midst of despair, a sliver of hope flickered in the back of my mind. Trevor had pulled me into his orbit, and despite my reluctance to trust him fully, the bond tethering us away from the chaos filled me with a strange sense of belonging. I could fight alongside him, uncover the truths buried in darkness. For a moment, I could be a part of something larger than myself, a force determined to reclaim our world from the hands of those who thrived on fear. The van sped into the night, and as we navigated through deserted streets, silence settled within the vehicle like a blanket, heavy with unspoken doubts and fears. I could hardly breathe under the weight of uncertainty. It stung beneath my skin, making every nerve tighten in stark readiness for the next move. Then the radio crackled to life, breaking the stillness with jolting urgency. A voice filtered through, amplified by static. Attention all units. Amanda Kane has been located. Proceed to extraction point immediately. Repeat. Amanda Kane has been located. My stomach dropped and my heart raced at the mention of her name, realization rippling through me like icy water. I turned to Trevor, fright lacing my voice as I whispered, "What does this mean?" Trevor's face paled, understanding dawning on him as he raked a hand through his tousled hair, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his steadfast gaze. "It means we're in way over our heads." And suddenly, in the uncertainty of the moment, the world felt both impossibly vast and dangerously small, every flicker of doubt intertwined with desperate determination gnawing at the edges of my mind. The choice to trust felt as fragile as a dream teetering on the brink of waking, and as I held onto Jake's trembling hand, I prepared to dive deeper into this journey, knowing the shadows lurking just beyond our reach threatened, not just our lives, but the very fragments of who we thought we were destined to become. Before I could conjure another thought, however, a deafening explosion resonated outside the van, sending a cascade of darkness crashing over us all at once, each of us left grappling with the shocking reality that in this moment, nothing could ever be the same again. The explosion reverberated through the van, the force throwing us against the seats, disorienting my senses, and igniting a fresh wave of terror in my chest. Shards of glass rained down like deadly confetti around us, and in that moment of chaos, the world outside fragmented, becoming an unrecognizable swirl of light and darkness. "Trevor, drive!" Jake shouted, panic rising in his voice, as the sound of sirens began to wail in the distance. Piercing through the shrapnel of confusion, I caught sight of Trevor's hands gripping the steering wheel, knuckles white as he wrestled for control. Flashes of debris and skidding tires filled the rearview mirror, painting a frantic picture of a scenario that felt too surreal to grasp. We were trapped, thrust into an unfolding nightmare, and every heartbeat echoed the dread settling in my bones. "Talk to me. What do we do?" My own voice was barely a whisper as the gravity of our reality settled upon me. I needed Trevor's guidance, needed him to anchor me amidst this maelstrom. "We need to get off the main roads," he replied tersely, his determination flickering like a flame buffeted by wind. "There's a back route I know that might get us clear." In an instinctual move, I reached for Jake's hand, squeezing it tightly as the world outside felt like it was collapsing inward. It was a desperate search for comfort in the chaos, a small gesture that bound us amidst the uncertainty. Jake offered me a quick, reassuring glance, his fear coated with a layer of resolve that came from our shared history, reminding me that I wasn't alone. "Turn left here," I shouted suddenly, catching a glimpse of an alleyway that seemed to promise a momentary refuge. It felt reckless, like we were dashing headfirst into unknown dangers, but fear propelled us forward, clouding my judgment. Trevor's eyes flicked to mine, gauging my sanity, and for a fleeting moment, something in his gaze deepened. There was a spark of trust there, a silent understanding that had grown amid the fever of uncertainty we faced. He hesitated, then veered into the alleyway, tires squealing against the pavement. The van lurched, and I braced myself against the seat. Rain began to fall heavily outside, hammering against the metal, blending together with our panic. Each droplet illuminated fragments of our situation, filling the interior of the van with muffled echoes of dread, but also a strange sense of togetherness in this fight for survival. As we navigated through the dimly lit alley, I caught sight of shadowy figures moving at the far end, contrasting sharply against the murky backdrop of the storm. My heart leapt into my throat, and I turned to Trevor, the realization sinking in. "We can't drive through that. He'll see us." "Stay down," he said, his voice steady, even if his eyes betrayed the urgency we all felt. "We're not done yet." With a determined nod, I complied, slipping low onto the van's floor. The metal was cold beneath me, a stark reminder of the danger that trailed closely behind. I could hear muffled voices drifting toward us, punctuated by occasional laughter that twisted my stomach into knots. Were they mocking us? Were they always one step ahead? "Find a place to hide," I whispered, desperation clawing at my throat as I turned to Jake, who was likewise crouched low, eyes wide. "We can't sit here for too long." Suddenly, we heard a loud bang, the unmistakable sound of a heavy object being hurled. It struck the van with a jarring thud, driving the air from my lungs as I fought to keep my breathing steady. Just as I began to spiral into panic, Trevor's voice broke through the haze. "Hold tight." With a swift motion, he spun the steering wheel, reversing the vehicle backward, the exhaust spluttering as he maneuvered us through fog and desolation. Each second stretched as we desperately evaded what felt like an inescapable grasp of fate. As we lurched into another street, I dared a glance outside. The rain was heavy, but through the haze, I spotted a flicker of Magenta flashlight cutting through the darkness, illuminating a group of figures converging down a corner, there. Gestures frantic. "Trevor." My voice cracked, signaling the need for immediate caution. "They're right there." His eyes narrowed as he focused on the approaching threats. "I know. Just give me a second." The tension hung heavily like smoke in the air. My heart felt like fragile glass, ready to shatter at any moment. But when Trevor took that precious second slowing down to plan our next move, I felt a surge of vulnerability. "This is it," I murmured under my breath, embracing the anxiety coursing through me. And just when I thought darkness would fully envelop our fate, something unexpected happened. As Jake turned slightly, brushing his damp hair off his face, a sudden burst of light flickered across the alley, revealing another figure this time, one that stood apart from the turmoil. "Over here." A woman's voice shouted into the chaos, waving frantically at us as if she had answers etched in her stride. My breath caught in my throat at her familiar silhouette cloaked in shadows. Recognition ignited a flicker of hope before reality crashed against it. What if this was yet another trick? But the urgency in her voice rang true. I felt Trevor's body tense beside me. Every moment felt like a threading of paths drawn together. "Who the hell is that?" Jake whispered, suspicion lacing his voice, but deep down, we all felt the pull of possibility. Before I could contemplate the implications, Trevor shifted the gear, the wheels screeching as he careened the van toward her, heart aching with a storm of emotions that surged within me. As we approached, a fragment of clarity emerged. Could she be the ally we so desperately needed? The woman's face turned sharply, illuminated for just a brief moment as the headlights caught her. Time froze as I recognized her, a figure from the past I thought had faded into memory. "Amanda," I gasped, warmth flooding my senses even as the name hung heavy in the van, fear mingling with a potent cocktail of old wounds and fresh beginnings. As our eyes locked, the questions flooded back. Who was she truly? What had changed? And in this moment of turbulence, was this the key to unearthing the tangled web of our fates, binding our fears into an unstoppable force? But before I could voice my thoughts, before I could even digest this inexplicable twist, a shadow leaped out onto the street, gun drawn, and I knew none of us were ready for the storm that was coming. The air was thick with tension, the heavy patter of rain the only sound amidst the chaos. My heart thudded violently against my chest as Trevor's words echoed in my mind. "Trust me completely." With Amanda standing surprisingly alone in the street, her expression a mixture of desperation and resolve, I felt the walls closing in. My thoughts raced. Could this be the turning point? Or was this just another layer in the labyrinth of deceit she had woven? She was my former friend, the one who had shattered everything I thought I knew. But now was there a thread of redemption? Or was this simply a new threat wrapped in old wounds? "Amanda." I breathed, confusion flaring within me. battling with the instinct to shield myself. "What are you doing here?" "I know what's happening, everything," she replied, her voice catching in her throat, eyes wide with urgency. "You don't understand how serious this is. We need to move." Before I could even process her words, shadows shifted behind her, figures moving with the predatory grace of hunters on a mission. I recoiled instinctively, pressing back against the cold vinyl seat, my pulse racing. The gun drawn toward Amanda sent a shockwave of fear crashing over me like icy waves. "Get in!" Trevor shouted, his voice slicing through the tension as he swung open the passenger door, his eyes darting nervously between me and Amanda. Now, I glanced back at Jake, whose face was painted with a mix of terror and uncertainty. He reached for my hand instinctively, anchoring me. "We can't leave her," I protested, every fiber in my being resisting the impulse to flee. "Yes, we can." "We're in danger," Trevor insisted, his tone firm, urging both Amanda and me to move. "Listen to him," Amanda cried, panic creeping into her voice as the shadows grew closer. "Please, I can help you. I wasn't just a bystander, I was trying to find out the truth too. It's bigger than you think." And just as the gunshots erupted again, the fear spiraled into a dark vortex of impending chaos, overwhelming my senses. It was sinking. I had to make a decision. With one last glance at Amanda, the girl I had once considered my closest friend, I felt the weight of choice settle heavily upon my shoulders. "Fine," I shouted, my voice breaking through the noise. "He'll trust you. But you better have a plan." "No time for discussion," Trevor exclaimed, urgency etched across his face as he waved us both in. Reluctantly, I climbed inside the van, pulling Jake along with me. The door slammed shut behind us with a finality that echoed in my chest. "Drive," I yelled, tension thick in the air. Trevor jumped into action, slamming down the gas pedal and pulling away just as the shadows shrouded the mouth of the alley. As we sped away, the rain pounded against the van's roof, drowning out every other sound except for the pounding of my heart. I stole a glance back at Amanda, her silhouette stark against the walls of chaos. There was a part of my heart aching not just for my lost friendship, but for the girl who was so profoundly wrestling with her own demons. But the danger was real. I felt trapped between the nostalgia of friendship and the reality of betrayal. "What's going on, Amanda?" I finally pressed, turning in my seat to face her, the van buzzing with tension. She wheezed, trying to find the words as Trevor expertly navigated through the rain-slicked roads. I wasn't the only one who knew her voice broke, and the admission hung in the air like an unspoken threat. There are those in this town who will do anything to maintain control. I thought if I shared your pain, I could be accepted, but it spiraled out of control. With each word, I could feel the truth threading its way back through our tumultuous past, unearthing the wounds I thought had healed. "You thought using me would make you popular?" I shot back, anger flaring within. It felt wrong to even consider feeling empathy for her right now. "No," she responded, desperation glinting in her eyes. "I wanted to be liked, but I never meant to hurt you so deeply. Too wanted to warn you before I was silenced." "What do you mean silenced?" Jake interjected, slightly breathless from the tension. At that moment, a deafening crack shook the air as something exploded behind us, an audible reminder of the shadows pursuing us. I turned to Trevor, fear swimming in my chest. "What did you involve her in, Trevor?" "It was never about involving anyone. I tried to protect you both," he barked, frustration spilling over. "Amanda found out things about a coalition of students who manipulate situations to control the narrative." "The explosion?" "It's just the beginning." With swift precision, Trevor weaved through the splash of water and debris, his focus unwavering. "If we don't figure out how to stop them, there will be no safe place for any of us. We need to dig deeper, and this time, we need to trust each other." A flicker of dread settled in my stomach, But there was no more time for bitterness. The storm was upon us, and I was caught in the whirl of it. Amanda, you said you wanted to warn me. How do we stop this? My voice broke slightly. I was still grappling with the remnants of our shattered friendship, but the stakes were higher than ever now. I have leads, but they're hidden. She hesitated. They consider me a threat now. We have to work together if we hope to uncover their plan before they can silence us all. With resolve settling in, I nodded, my heartbeat slowing as the unity of purpose drew us together. The shadows loomed, but amid the chaos, I could feel a flickering warmth igniting inside me. We may have been fractured, but we were bound by something larger than ourselves, now a storm that could forge us into something stronger. Holding on to that flicker, I whispered, together then. Let's find the truth. As we raced into the dark, hidden chaos, a sense of determination began to weave its way through the remnants of our earlier betrayals. I didn't know what lay ahead, but I could sense in the depths of my being that this was just the beginning of a story reshaped by upheaval, a chance for redemption both for Amanda and me. And as the rain pelted the van, I allowed myself to believe that we could forge a new path through the shadows, because amidst the storm, I could already feel the change brewing deep within, transforming each of us into something unstoppable. It was time to face the truth, and the world wouldn't devour us today. This was our fight, our future, to claim a fierce reckoning on the horizon, where every heartbreak could bloom into hope once more. The journey ahead was uncertain, but as I leaned into the curves of the storm, I knew that I had found the strength to rise this time, beyond unforgiven pain and betrayal, into a light that could not be extinguished. And sometimes, in the midst of darkness, it is the moment of greatest despair that ignites the very spark of resilience that binds us together, forging the unbreakable into the unstoppable.